Hey, welcome back to Maximath. What we're going to be looking at today is Fed capture, when monetary policy becomes a political tool. We see that happening in the US right now, and I'm going to show you why, using Turkey as an example, it can be a bad thing for that stock market. Okay, cool. So let's jump into it. This is the Turkish stock market, the top 100 shares in the candles. And from the look at it, at first glance, it looks up only, the candles. It looks great. But that's in Turkish lira. If we were to look at the Turkish top 100 shares in their stock market, like the index, but in US dollar terms, it paints quite a different picture. So, okay, what happened? Let's look at the history here. First of all, a long time ago, there was a subtle signal that was not taken well by international FX markets. Local stock markets didn't mind it so much, but it was a government decree that let the president hire and fire Fed chairs. Okay, so the president could say, I don't like this Fed chair's attitude, he's out. Okay, nothing really happened for a long time. Erdogan came back into power, Erdogan, the Turkish president, I don't know how to pronounce it. And at this point, early 2016, he started calling the Fed traitors, not traders, for not lowering rates. Does that, that sounds a little bit familiar to what's happening now. That wasn't immediately bad. It was just him publicly saying it, and in fact, for a while, the Turkish stock market actually went up a little bit there. But over here, Erdogan got back in power, and he started appointing his own Fed chair. From there, it was actually over there is when he appointed his Fed chair by his presidential decree that got, put into power like nearly 10 years before that, 8 years. But from there, the stock market really suffered. And it was really actually from here till there. Let's have a look. It went down from 312 to, at its lowest, 135. So nearly like a 2.5x down. That sucks, like 66% odd down. 60% down. Yeah, that's not obvious from looking at the stock market in its own currency, in its local currency, Turkish lira, which is a trap that we kind of fall into when we look at the American stock market. There's a lot of American inflation. So if the stock market goes up 50%, but inflation goes up 60%, you didn't make 50%, you actually lost 10% of your purchasing power. Your savings, the amount of milk and eggs that you can buy with your money went down by 10%. In real world terms, I think that's part of why we're seeing that gold ratio flash, 1.5 S&P 500 divided by gold. People are rushing to the safety of gold as an inflation hedge. American stock market is also just overpriced, but it can remain overpriced for longer than we can remain solvent. If you permanently a bear, even while the stock market is just going up and up and up and up, even if it is a bubble, if you're the only one that's right, then you're wrong in the markets. So we gotta wait for truly bearish signs before we start taking out short positions or going into all cash or into all gold. But yeah, okay, I just wanted to show this, how the Turkish stock market went down when there was Fed capture, and it did return to sort of rationality here when Erdogan started actually raising rates and electing better. I think this is when he elected a better Fed chair. And then since they started raising rates and since they elected that Fed chair, things actually started going all right. In reality, it's kind of flat. The candles look great, but it's flat. Yeah, I hope you found that interesting. I really like this graph and the historic analogy to today. So yeah, like and subscribe if you did. Comment and tell me why I'm wrong if you didn't. There's a lot that could be wrong, The stock markets are incredibly complicated, so drawing an analogy like this is also inaccurate in the sense that you can't take into account all of the variables, and the US stock market is the biggest one in the world, but yeah, we could see huge inflation there in the US, and we could see the value of the S&P 500 decrease over the next few years in other currencies, in a basket of other currencies terms, not in US dollar terms. But yeah, cool. That's it for me. Thanks. Ciao.